Hi, I'm Rebecca Balcárcel with Writers on Writing. Let's talk to Adrianna Cuevas, who's an author and educator. Let me ask you about revision too. So, can you help us know what you mean by revision and what do you do in revision, maybe at first and then later? Are there stages, or how do you turn that draft into a published manuscript?
Yeah. I will say for me, revision, I am very ruthless in revision. There's that phrase that gets thrown around about killing your darlings, where, authors are afraid to delete things. I am a serial murderer. Like, I have no darlings. They are dead. And there's a reason for that. And it's actually something that I'm very thankful happened to me with my first book. My first book, The Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez, I wrote the first draft, revised it several times, and I sent it to my agent. She gave me one suggestion for how she thought the plot could be better. And I thought, you know what? Only one? This is awesome. I've lucked out. Like, so easy. So I started revising the book based on her one suggestion. And the first chapter, I didn't have to change too much. Second chapter, a little bit more. But as I progressed through the book, her one suggestion completely unraveled the plot. The story didn't work anymore. And I had to rewrite this book from scratch, probably about the last 20 chapters. I was essentially writing a new book all over again.
Wow.
So yes, at the time I thought, I don't know that I can do this. This is a lot of work. Do I really want to be an author? Things like that. But because I went through that, revised it, ended up with a much stronger book. Now, when I sit down to revise, I know that I can tackle anything. If I have to rewrite this book, fine. And I've even had books where the editor came back and said, hey, you've written this in third person past. We'd like it in first person present, and so you have to rewrite the whole book that way. That doesn't scare me anymore. Because honestly, revisions, you have to be willing to make massive changes. Because if you're just trying to do the bare minimum, you're not going to end. Yes, it's less work for you, but you're not going to end up with your strongest writing. So for me, I delete whole chapters, whole characters. No one is sacred in my stories. And for me, that works because I know that I'm going to end up with something stronger in the end, because I am very self-aware that my first drafts are far from what the story needs to be. And so I have to be willing to go over it and over it and over it. And I think that's the other thing. For me, the two big things with revision are, one, making sure that you're willing to make huge changes, and two, willing to go over your story so many times. I know that for Nestor Lopez, when I finally sent what was considered, like, we were going to go to copy edits next. This was the final version of the book. You don't have to make any more changes. I think the file said something like Nestor.25, meaning I had read and revised this book 25 times. And I don't think that's an accurate number because I gave up counting at some point. But for me, that means when I sit down to brainstorm a new story, I have to make sure I have a story that I'm going to be willing to read 25 times. Am I obsessed enough and excited enough about this idea that I'm going to be willing to put all that massive work into it? So for revision, for me, it's making big changes, meaning for me, most of the time, the reason I have to make big changes is because of the pacing in my plot. I tend to rush some things, and then I tend to kind of take some other things a little too slow. So pacing is still, even though I'm working on my 7th book right now, pacing is still something that I have to work on to get right. I never get it right the first time. So I think being self-aware of what you know as a writer are your strengths and weaknesses. So maybe what you need to focus on in revision. And then a lot of times we're blind to our own weaknesses. So a huge part of revision is collaborating with other writers, sending them your writing, having them read it, because they're going to have fresh eyes on it. You've read it 25 times. The jokes don't land anymore. And so it's nice to have somebody read it with fresh eyes who is going to give you honest feedback on it. So I would say those would be my big revision tips.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.